Outputting our coverage. It's what we do.
That's all we do every Thursday at 5:30. College football. College football.
Mountain West Conference.
Doesn't matter.
SEC
is all that matters.
Nick Saban
is crazy.
Yeah.
And that's all. Let's start the show.
Hello, faithful listeners out there in Radio Land. This is Outputting Our Coverage. We are back for another rip-roaring week of college football discussion. I'm back from the ashes, basically, after possibly the worst college football-related weekend I've had in a really long time.
Things were not looking up for you this week.
Auburn, pretty bad loss. We'll definitely talk about that. The surprising one to me was my terrible pick'em performance. Solid 2-8 this week.
I'm telling you, that was impressive. I didn't know that you could go from middle of the pack to all the way to the bottom so quickly.
Well, the really sad thing about that is that I actually lost to some of the members of the Pick'em who did not turn in their picks on time.
Oh, no.
Little known fact about the Pick'em, we don't try to publish this too much, but if you don't get your picks in, it just leaves you with the defaults, like everybody on the right side.
Right.
I lost those people. That's I actually tried. I put a lot of thought into it.
That's sad.
It is sad. Very sad. With that said, let's move into the first segment we always like to do on this show, and by that I mean for the past 2 weeks. Good call, bad call, where we, you can kind of guess where this one's going this week. But David, I'll let you start, whichever one you choose.
What do you think? Good call or bad call? I'm going to say good call. I think my good call of the week was trusting the SEC traditions and the powerhouses. You know, with Florida against Texas A&M and with Georgia against Missouri. I think that was my good call this week.
Yeah, definitely traditional old man SEC football victorious this week.
We did an over-under on how many times they would say that during the broadcast of the Georgia-Missouri game. It went over 20.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it did. The Florida-Texas A&M game a little bit closer. I just saw some highlights of that, but that Manziel kid, he's looking pretty good.
Surprised me. I thought a freshman quarterback in the new system, but he was impressive. He's going to scare some people.
I think Texas A&M is going to be a player this year in some circles. I'll go ahead and give my good call as well. Pretty much I only had one choice this week, Iowa State.
You had one of two.
That's pretty much all I had to go on. Iowa State, like we said, Paul Rhodes doing some nice things up there. Iowa, with Kirk Ferentz in his 400th year as head coach, kind of on the downslide.
Not looking good at all.
Yeah, I would predict that Ferentz may be leaving by his own choice or not, maybe even at the end of this season.
That's possible. It does not look like it's going to get any better for Iowa.
Yeah, they've just been kind of stagnant. But Iowa State, they're kind of taking hold in that Big 12 North division, I guess. There's a little bit of an opening. Nebraska's not there anymore.
That's right.
I mean, who else is in the Big 12 North?
Kansas.
Kansas State, I guess.
Kansas State now, their quarterback does look improved.
Yeah.
I thought he was overrated a lot last year when they were talking about him, but he's really improved on his passing game. He's very accurate.
All right, we might as well go ahead and give your bad call first, because I got like 8 of them.
My bad call, once again, and I said I would never do it ever again, and I did, is trusting Vandy.
Yeah.
Never trust Vandy.
We really thought they were going to be different this year, but it's, fool us 300 times, shame on us.
I guess, and, it's hard to judge that because Northwestern did beat Syracuse in a close game by 1, and then Syracuse turned around and played it pretty tough against USC, tougher than a lot of people expected. So Is Northwestern good? Is Vandy bad? We still don't know, but that's still a bad call.
Well, as an Auburn fan, I'm hoping that I can say with some truth that it's hard to gauge how good teams are this early in the season. Maybe we can go with that.
We can hope.
Speaking of bad calls, obviously, pretty much anything I said related to Auburn on this show the past 2 weeks has been a bad call up to this point. I will still probably continue to pump the sunshine just because that's the only way I can sleep at night.
You have to have hope.
But the other direction I'd like to go with the bad call is Texas State. I really had a feeling that old Dennis Franchione was going to pull off the revenge killing against Tommy T. Didn't quite work out that way, so...
Hard to keep a team like that hyped for 2 weeks in a row. Plus, it made me feel better because I had an awful pick with Navy last week, so it's just nice to see us even out.
Yeah, well, definitely Texas State not going to be making its way into the Big Ten for the rest of the year. We'll just go ahead and say that right now, an insurance policy to make sure that I don't make too many more stupid picks, so... We'll try to do a little bit better this week with our picks. We'll start on the other side. Obviously, we're going to talk about Alabama, Arkansas. Now we are also forced to talk about Auburn, Louisiana, Monroe. So we'll do that as well on the other side here. Stay tuned on Outputting Our Coverage.
It's time for SEC Preview. SEC, Big 10, Big 12, can't count. SEC, college football robber barons. SEC, yeah, they're big, they're fast, they're strong. And Missouri and Texas A&M as well. Yeah, SEC Preview. Here we go.
All right, we are back here on Outputting Our Coverage. As promised, we're going to try to figure out what exactly happened to Auburn last week. And unfortunately, Auburn, the game against Louisiana Monroe this Saturday, supposedly a cupcake, definitely not looking that way now after Louisiana Monroe's last-minute stunner of a victory against Arkansas. Arkansas dropping from number 8 to out of the polls this week.
Historic.
It is history. I don't think that's ever happened before. So
not that big of a fall.
Yeah, definitely big problems in Hogland. Big problems on the plains right now, though, too. What were your impressions? Try to boil it down to a couple of things of what happened.
Well, once again, very poor tackling. The defense has got to tighten up, but I really can't tell. The quarterback for Mississippi State last week was on the money, and even rolling out sometimes. I think that spells trouble for Auburn coming up this week because the quarterback for ULM, we watched a lot of that game, and he is most comfortable when being pressured and having to scramble outside of the pocket, which Auburn did not defend very well last week. So you got to hope they can do better with that. And then Auburn's offense was pathetic. I mean, it was really hard to watch towards the end of the game because they were so afraid to throw the ball. They had zero confidence in the quarterback, and so they were running the ball 3 downs and then punting, and it was just really got ugly towards the end of the game.
Yeah, the defense is just not performing the way I expected it to, personally. And the biggest issue for me has got to be the defensive line play, especially the defensive tackles. Auburn has quite a bit of depth and relatively large amount of experience compared to other positions.
But just no production.
But they're just not getting anything out of those guys, and that's kind of how you see those mobile quarterbacks. Even Tyler Russell's not that mobile of a guy, but he's still able to get away with the defensive ends getting a fair amount of pressure. The quarterback's just able to kind of slip right through the middle, and that's been a big issue for Auburn. The secondary still not very good. It looks like they're kind of lost out there, not getting lined up, not sure what their assignments are. Just overall, defensively, not a terrible performance for the first 2.5 quarters. They did a decent job, and I know it's tough when your offense isn't doing anything.
That's true. They were on the field a lot.
So maybe you cut them a little bit of slack there, but definitely still not where you were expecting to see at this point in the season. And you mentioned play calling on offense. There were a couple of times, multiple times in that game where I was just scratching my head. 3rd downs, continually running draw plays. I understand that you're afraid to let Kyle Frazier open it up and just sling it all over the place, but you got to give the guy a chance.
At that point, if you have that little confidence in him, you need to get somebody else in the game. Give the freshman a start.
Yeah, try something. But I don't think it's to that point yet. I mean, Kyle Frazier had a very bad game at Mississippi State, yes, but I don't personally feel like it's time to try somebody else yet, mostly because Auburn doesn't really have that many other good options.
Well, let me take you down the line of questioning. Does it look like the Auburn players are a little uncomfortable?
It looks like they're very uncomfortable.
Do you think that could have anything to do with the fact that you hired a 70s porn star for your defensive coordinator?
I'd be more inclined to say that the coordinator I'm less confident in right now is definitely Scott Loeffler on offense. I think Van Gorder will get them where they need to be. That maybe the players just aren't there right now.
And the system that he's trying to put in takes a while to get used to.
Yeah, and especially with the secondary, it's still very frustrating to me to see the very loose coverage 10 yards off the ball. But the more I think about it, the more I read, I think it may just be that Auburn doesn't have the guys to do the press coverage. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's talk about this ULM matchup. As I said, normally this is not a game we would talk about, but I think we definitely, need to respect Louisiana Monroe as an opponent here. And it's surprising to me that the line in Vegas for this game has Auburn as a 17-point favorite. I see it being much closer than that.
I do too, and I think ULM is not a flash in the pan. They play very, very physical on defense. They let up some points because they don't have the athletes, to be honest with you, but every time they got their hands on somebody, they brought them down, and typically they brought them down hard, and they were the aggressor, which was weird. They went into Arkansas, ranked number 8 in the country, and they were the more aggressive team. And they're not a flash in the pan. They have some talent.
No, they definitely do. They contained Niall Davis to about 60 yards. Niall Davis, coming back off of his knee injury last year, was one of the best running backs in the SEC before that happened. They may have lost, a step or two, but still a very good running back. They were able to contain him, which is not something you would typically see out of a team like Louisiana Monroe playing an SEC team.
That's right, and if I gave you the stat lines before the game and said that Niles Davis would have 16 carries and he would get outrushed, and I told you that the ULM quarterback would have to throw it almost 70 times, you would say they would lose because they're behind.
Right.
But it was impressive. They were efficient. The quarterback went 42 of 67 for 412 yards. I mean, not a whole lot going wrong with that game.
Yeah, so maybe if you're looking for a silver lining, maybe you can say that they had all summer to prepare for Arkansas. They were off the first week. Maybe you throw that in there. I don't know. It's about the only positive I could find for our little pre-game outlook. But overall, to me, this is a very worrisome matchup for Auburn. Louisiana Monroe is good at all the things that have been giving Auburn lots of trouble. You mentioned a quarterback who's able to use his feet a little bit. ULM's quarterback actually had more rushing yards than Niall Davis did.
That's right.
So that's definitely not good for Auburn. A team that's able to sling it around against Auburn's struggling secondary, not a good situation either. You just, I think what you have to hope for is that Auburn finally getting to play at home. Overall, superior talent to Louisiana Monroe. You have to hope that maybe that's the difference here.
And with Auburn, it's been a bunch of little things. They just can't get the little things done. A little bit of pressure in the middle, being off just a little bit on a throw, or tackling somebody but not taking them all the way to the ground. So if they can fix a couple of the little things, they could have a pretty decent game and maybe get on the right track after this game.
Yeah, so what's your key for this one? What's Auburn got to do to win this one?
Auburn has got to stay contained in the secondary. They can't give up the big play, especially early. If they give up a big play early, it's just going to compound the mental state that they're already in, and I think it gets ugly from there. But if they can keep it close early and then kind of explode with a big play or two late, I think they could handle it. However, I do think ULM has the talent, and they've got the playmaking ability. They can do something like that.
So you're saying Auburn should try to embrace this bend but don't break defensive approach?
Early.
Yeah, okay.
And then send the house late.
Yeah, okay. My key, we kind of sound like broken records with our keys here each week, but it's sort of the same problems each week for this team. Mine is Kyle Frazier. Definitely a guy that looked uncomfortable last week, said in interviews this week that he felt like he made a mistake on 75% of the plays. It starts and ends with that guy. Louisiana Monroe is going to make Auburn pass, just like all the other teams have done. Right. And if he can get some more confidence, if Scott Loeffler, the offensive coordinator, can give him some easy throws to get his confidence up. Don't start him out with this play action, back to the defense.
Right.
Get him some throws to the flats. Let him do something. If he can get going, I think Auburn will win this game.
If you look at the Texas A&M game with a freshman quarterback, 3 of the first 4 passes were behind the line of scrimmage for that guy. And then he got on a roll in the first half, and they moved the ball down the field. They've got to start something like that. Give him some easy throws, get his confidence up, and then try some stuff downfield.
Yeah. All right, so what's your prediction here?
I've tossed and turned over this game. I've gone back and forth on my picks. It's really difficult to me, but I'm going to say ULM wins it, and Auburn goes 0-3.
Wow. I really hope that Auburn could prove you wrong. I wish there was more trash talking I could do, but there's really not based on anything I've seen. I'm going to take Auburn in a close one here, 21-17. I do think it's going to be a back-and-forth game, maybe higher scoring than that. I don't know, but I think you'll see about that kind of margin.
And I hope I'm wrong. I hope Auburn does get out of this funk and they score a bunch of points and their defense looks good.
Yeah, I don't know. Very, very tough game, though. Definitely not a sleeper.
Not your normal Auburn-ULM game.
Definitely not. All right, well, apparently there is another pretty big SEC game going on this week.
That's what they tell me.
Yeah, Alabama, Arkansas. Maybe not as close of a matchup as it once was with Arkansas's performance last week.
That's right.
What's the latest you're hearing on Tyler Wilson in this one, Arkansas quarterback?
I personally don't think he's going to play. A lot of people are on the fence. Of course, they're playing it close to the chest, but